Hello, everybody, and welcome to Boss Talks. This is episode 99. It is on the cusp of 100, but 99 is just as special to me, and I'm super excited today to have yet another partner in HOA management, Carrie McGonagle. She is with Blue Mountain Community Management, and what I'm excited about is the HOA side of our business is very important to us, but I have not had as much success in having guests from that side of the business. So I'm super excited to have Carrie, and hopefully that only continues to build and have more and more. And hopefully she'll send somebody my way to have even more guests, because I think it's super important to highlight some of the bosses of HOA on Boss Talks. So great to have her here. And she is, if I didn't already mention it, the Senior Vice President of Blue Mountain, and she's located in the great state of Oregon, where I hail from originally. I'm up in the Seattle market now, but I grew up in Oregon, the Portland metro area, so I have a fond place in my heart for that area and look forward to talking about that further. But before we get into it any further, I'm your host, Evan Happel. I'm with Community Boss, and we have a great great solution for you when it comes to managing your physical spaces. And we are a solution not only for apartments, but for HOAs and condo communities. So if you find yourself needing to manage those guest parking registrants, or just guests in general in their cars, or you want to use that amenity space more efficiently for your residents and owners, come my way. We can help you out, maybe generate revenue if that's your jam too. But if you have any questions, let me know and we can get into it. But today it's about Carrie, so let's get going. All right, Carrie.
Hi. Well, that makes it even, I'm great. That makes it even better, Evan. I didn't know you were from here originally.
Yes. Yep.
And I manage clients both in Oregon and the Seattle area, so I'm very familiar as well. And so happy to be here.
Yeah. Fun fact, one of our founders lives in an HOA that is managed by Blue Mountain.
Oh, give them my sincerest condolences. I'm kidding. We are great clients. That's awesome. Always love to hear that. Yeah, so I've been with Blue Mountain for a little over 13 and a half years, which is kind of crazy. Doesn't happen a ton in our industry. And I was the 5th employee of this company.
Wow.
And the first not related person in this company.
Okay. So well, that's super interesting. I've worked for families, and they can go a lot of different ways. Some positive, some less positive. So that's awesome that you're still there. That means it's been a positive experience.
I am. It was really cool. And it gives a new definition to the buzz term work family. Legit, that there was some family. But generally it's been a very fun experience for us. So I think, like most people, I'm going to give you a little background about how I started in this industry. Because I think it's important to celebrate and talk about, especially as we talk about kind of employing tomorrow and what's the future of this industry. I think a really natural reflection is, well, how did I get into this industry? How did you get into this industry? I think it's really interesting. So my story is I found HOA management completely by accident, as is always the case almost. I think I've heard of maybe 2 individuals in 13 and a half years that found it on purpose. And their parents worked in the industry. So it may be because we're from the great Pacific Northwest, where HOAs became things primarily in my space, HOAs in the in 2000s-ish. But it wasn't really like a super defined industry. There's always been condominiums and some co-ops here and there, and like super cool premier mega associations with super exclusive country clubs. But for the rest and the lay people here, HOAs were like, huh? Those are for fancy people. So during college, I worked at a bank for all 4 years. Side note, I know you have littles at home. Best education you can get on humanity during those formative years, work in a bank. You learn a lot. And then I graduated from college really excited with my fresh degree to hit my fully grown career job into arguably one of the worst economies around. Is in the late 2000s, and everybody stopped retiring. They just stopped, which stopped opening up entry-level positions. I was lucky enough, though, to actually start an entry-level position in my study career, which is accounting. I know people are shocked. They're like, you speak out loud, but you studied accounting. I really actually love it. But there are all paths and all types. So I started my career, my adulthood in a tiny coastal town in Oregon at a CPA firm. And I was happily working my way through tax season at a whole ripe old age of 22. And I started having partners of that firm try to kind of ask if anybody had caught my eye in town, like I might want to have a romantic relationship with. And I'm like, what is happening? And having staffed myself, I mean, I haven't looked into romantic relationships as a path to resiliency and keeping them to stay. But that's what was happening there.
Interesting.
Needless to say, at 22, that was way not in my timeline yet. So I was like, get me back to Portland. I need to be back where people, there's some time and ability to develop and grow a career. So I started to work with a firm that did sales and marketing, and I worked as a recruiter. I did that for like 3.5 years to get through kind of that worst period there. I feel like it took a while to do that. And I did that. And then it started to dawn on me, I need to start working with numbers again. I spent all this money for this college education, and I need to be familiar with accounting, because if you don't use it, you lose it. So then I found a job, how many people find a job. I talked to my friends, and I had a friend who went and got a job in a multifamily managing apartments.
Okay.
I can do this. I can make some leasing commissions. This would be good. And at least I'm working with ledgers and not just recruiting. So I can do this. I got this. So I worked in multifamily for just about a year, managing apartments. The first 6 months was great. I felt like I was on HGTV, showing people their future homes. I got leasing commissions. It was so much fun. And then the firm that I worked with realized that I actually understood bookkeeping and could fix office books or make ledgers balance or solve, kind of issues that were going around. So then I started getting moved to site after site after site that was maybe leased up, but maybe had some challenges in bookkeeping. Decided, and again, talked to a different friend, that it was time to make a change and do something else. I was working in a not so great area of Portland in a fully leased up apartment complex behind a little place called the Dolphin 2. And if you're familiar with the Portland area, Evan will understand what that means. And I thought, maybe it's time to try something else.
Is this like Burnside area, or where's this at?
Laughlin, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just out there. So I had a friend at the time. I saw the same friend. Her sister ran a temp agency, and she says, Carrie, why don't you give your resume to my sister? And she always has something cooking. And so her sister took my resume, and her sister's kid played ball with the original founder of Blue Mountains kid. And that is how I found Blue Mountain Community Management.
Okay.
So that was a very long story about how somebody accidentally stumbles in. So I was the 5th employee for Blue Mountain. And I probably about 3 days in, the prior owner gave me all of their personal information because I could now do their family financials and our company financials. And it was a hit. It was definitely a startup, and it's kind of fun to work for a family-owned small business. It's really exciting. You work through a lot of problems and stuff. Probably about 2 weeks in, I was made my boss's mom's boss. That was also an interesting dynamic. I would not usually recommend that style of accommodation. It was a little interesting, but generally, we all kind of had the same goal in mind. So we all kind of stepped in line, and things were like fast and furious. Ironically, one of the experiences I took from college, I'm always a bit of a political science nerd. And in college, I did Model United Nations, which is a bit of a nerd club, but also really cool. Like, imagine my shock and surprise that I could use parliamentary procedure actually in my professional life. I was so excited by that.
Is this during board meetings?
Well, during board meetings, yes. And I'm like, oh, Robert's Rules, this is awesome. I know all about this. Man. So that was like an odd take on what your career might look like starting in community management. So I started I started as a tip agent for 3 months. And then slowly, as the company was growing, we were growing faster and faster. I told my boss, I said, hey, I've done recruiting. I can do recruiting. Well, that made me, I would designate it as fake HR. I have a lot of respect for real HR. But I was fake HR for like probably about 7 years here. And our company, gosh, I want to say we went from 5 to about, I want to say like 45, 50 people in that time frame. So talk about dipping your toe in and diving right in. I mean, I'm playing Google HR, taking as many backup classes as I can. And, we went into maintenance and all sorts of things. And I was like, how do I take care of all of these folks? But that was really exciting and a cool opportunity. I also grew the accounting team here and the customer service team here. And kept a small set of clients that I managed myself that were more those areas related. And then probably in 2021, so a good number of years into it, I took a full headlong dive into the full-on dark side of community management, the community manager side of things. And I became the senior vice president in 2021 of Blue Mountain. And I've always had a real passion for what makes people work, what fuels them, what keeps them here, and what is super exciting about what we do. And that kind of catapulted things and beliefs that I had held and worked through, through being fake HR. All the way to now, which has been super awesome. So I have been really fortunate to have some really great people that I've worked with. I've seen people that I've worked with at the startup grow, escalate, move even higher than me in their careers. And it's really cool. It's something that makes me very passionate about this industry.
For sure.
Yeah. So part of, one of my passions, I never believe you're ever fully baked. So when people are like, what are your perfect plans and processes that work 100% of the time, every time? I'm like, they don't exist. We're always like at 85% because you need a good foundation, but things are always changing, adjusting, and employees or people, the general public's expectation of what an employer does or what an HOA management company does changes on a daily basis. So I kind of dove into things that I'm interested in through either hearing talk around the office, hearing talk at home, spending too much time on Reddit, reading what people have to say on the internet. Great ideas come from there. Also, really not great ideas come from there too. But I was working. I was really excited. I was able to get my team on cool schedules like 410s. I was reading all about how great that is and how that builds employee morale. And then some remote work days. It was super exciting. And we were able to infiltrate all of this stuff into our current system and work through client expectations with our clients. And then COVID happened. And all of that really cool stuff. It's kind of a funny story. I was actually preparing a presentation to present nationally to our parent company, Associa, at our annual leadership conference when they're like, hey, so we're going to do that remote this year because, everybody's going to be remote because there's this little tiny pandemic. And I was like, oh, all of these things I worked so hard for and studied so hard and got so many different perspectives all just instantly became the norm. So I feel like everybody had a real good back to the drawing board moment in 2020. But it's really exciting. And COVID was, devastating a little bit to our industry, to our company, specifically women left the workforce. I don't know that we've ever fully recovered as a country or even as an industry from those, but there have been some monumental changes that have made this career a lot more successful. First off, this digital video networking call thing, this is really great. I don't know if I had to take people back to a 2019 level of employment. I think I might have to hire a whole new company. I think it would be really challenging. I'm very grateful for that. But evolving boards' needs and expectations and helping them work through service levels and stuff to make sure we have a place, a long-standing career in industry is important. So we do, and I do, a lot of board education. It's a passion of mine. I also really love, going back to my roots, I love talking about accounting. So we recently did a board accounting training with my accounting manager at my company. And we do it every year. It's kind of a big hoot. So one of the things that always sort of surprised me, just given my different background, working in multifamily, working in banking, working just in like HR marketing, is how HR recruiting, not marketing. That's Evan. That's all you. I love marketing folks, and I am not one of them. But how we make this a desirable place to work. I think for years, as management in an HOA management company, we hear all sorts of horror stories, war stories. Everybody's had them. I think at different like CAI national conferences, we've talked about we should make a podcast of, can you believe this really happened? And we definitely have an industry where those are very relatable comments, no matter who you work for or what you're doing. But one of the things that I started to see and realize is there are changing expectations of what is required from an employer. The employee-employer agreement or your wellness proposition or whatever for your employees have to change. And as an industry, we have to adapt. And those changes have been a lot slower than I would love, specifically in my market. And I'm definitely down to talk to whoever wants to talk about that. But we have to make it a great place to work. We always knew, we asked managers specifically to do stressful things. Sometimes the job of a community manager is very stressful and stuff can ebb and flow. And we always tried to make a great environment for managers to come back, feel support, feel really cared about. As a company, that's something that's been a part of our foundation. You can ask anybody who works for me. I do believe in the power of food, sweets, coffee. Those are all fairly prevalent here at Blue Mountain. But also truly support when stuff comes down to it. So I have a passion for this. My managers and people who have worked for me in my accounting team, my service team, has a real passion for our industry. But more people left than came in. We still are trying to balance that. So one of the things we have to talk about is how do we become or maintain a desirable place to work? We lovingly used to refer to this as the place where essentially dreams go to die. So you've lived your career, and now you realize, oh, I can't do what I want, and I found community management, and it's super great. I don't think when we go to Gen Z and we market that, I don't think that's really going to be an exciting place for them to want to work. What do you think?
You don't think saying where dreams go to die is the tagline?
I mean, there might be a subsect of people, but probably not everyone.
Yeah, probably not.
But it was meant in the best way. I mean, you've experienced some things, you found life, and then you found a great industry to be in, and you feel comfortable here, and you can build a career, and you can build a path. But I do think it is on us to make what we do exciting and enticing. So gone are the days of people having just the transactional exchange of, well, you work for me and you pay me money and here we go. Like we can't, like that's, I know it seems really basic, but that's kind of gone. Yes, we still pay people money. They still do work for us. But there's a bigger level of engagement and expectation required. On the other hand, we have to kind of re-clarify the roles of what it means to be a community manager. I think one of the things that's been not as consistent is what that looks like from company to company, what that basic level of service looks like. So we do a lot of education, and I think every company out there educates on their level of service and what that means specifically to their boards. For employees, from moving from company to company, that changes and adjusts. So those are things that we really work hard, and moving forward, we really need to work hard on as an industry to fully bake in. I know we have a lot of great support groups, great information out there, but regionally, I think working together, that's really kind of been a passion. And it's why I really enjoy being involved in our local organizational groups. I work with Oregon and Washington Community Association managers. I'm on the board, but I've been to lots of Western Oregon CAI events, Washington State CAI events. And it's really cool to see a dedicated and motivated group of people in this industry to work together and work through that with.
Is that an official association, and is it different from CAI, or how does?
Oh yeah. Sorry, this is not a marketing for Alcam, but Alcam is an official association, and okay. we work very closely with CAI down here. But being in the Portland area, a lot of us management companies and managers service associations in 2 states, and that can be challenging because there's 2 different sets of laws, or even more sets of laws. So Oregon and Washington Community Association Management, we have a course a certification that we give managers who are in the area. So it's a course that we work on called the CCM course. And after you've been a manager for 2 years, you can take the course. You study the statutes in Oregon, Washington. You take an ethics course, and you can pass a test. One of the things we are also working on as an organization and the planning stages, I'm always in planning, again, 85% baked, I believe it in all areas of my life, are some advanced courses for community managers who are looking for more specifically detailed topics on things, and working in concert with community associations institute. So OutCam is an organization of managers and management partners like yourself. And we work together to help further our industry. So you can check it out online. It's OWCAM, and look it up. It's a cool organization, and we work in concert with our local CAI. They're not competitors, which is one of the really cool things about it.
So it's kind of it's a complementary thing to bridge the over the two states, basically.
Correct. Yes. Okay. And I think sometimes it is helpful to have open conversations without concern of a board member being there or something like that. So sometimes it really helpful is to have vendors and managers just really problem solve together and learn together as a group. So yeah, it's been a very rewarding organization to be a part of. Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
And you serve on the board. What's your role there?
So I am a director, and I sit on the education and programs committee of OutCam. So we plan educational events, and then work on our certification course, as well for our community managers and vendors here in that work in Oregon and Washington.
Okay. So kind of tied to like employing people, attracting people, what are some of the like education pieces that you think are like important for somebody to learn either before or immediately jumping in?
So I think when jumping in, I think more so than specific pre-cooked education, has to do with almost personality or curiosity or wanting to learn or emotional intelligence. So one of the cool things about this industry is there's not one like fully proven background. This will make you a great community manager, or this will make you great in this industry. There are really different pieces of people's backgrounds that they can bring in that really help them in their career. And the people, since we work with volunteer homeowner boards, every personality has a different complement. So there's not like, if I had all of one kind of the same manager, I would say I'd have a lot of boards that would be displeased. So I have some managers that are super like on it with numbers, like that's their jam. I do love them, being an accounting background myself. But some managers who, I mean, it's actually kind of amazing to watch. They can pick up the phone and talk to anyone. And like, I swear to God, some boards are so happy with that. They're like, oh no, don't even worry about the numbers. I know you got me. And that's really meaningful to them. I have some boards who are like, please direct me. And so you need some more managers who are more direct, which would really speak not quite right to other boards. So there's a lot of different backgrounds that work to make a community manager. Once you are in our industry, one of the most important things that I found that's really helpful is networking and finding a mentor, whether it is within your own company or organization within you, or partnering with a vendor and just having open conversations about what worked here. Why did they do that? I don't really understand, like, how did this work? Finding mentors is a huge thing and helps people stick, and it helps people find meaning in what can sometimes be a really challenging position. And then of course you have your traditional CAI education. There's something to be said for that. Having a basic vernacular, a glossary, and a common understanding of what to be speaking the same language as your vendors and your your other managers and make sure you're on the same page and the same terminology is helpful. But those are like, I mean, I call them one-time tests. I took my PCAM. That was so much work. But it is like that case study was a one-time thing. So once you have that information and you have the designation, you check the mark, guess what? You have to keep up on that. You have to keep up on that by having continuing education, having these continued conversations, having meaningful conversation. And so we've worked with managers, who maybe this is their first job, who've worked their way up from high school and worked their way into management. And it's I think it's a really cool thing that this is still an industry where you can work your way up with your high school diploma and have a full-fledged meaningful career. You do have to challenge yourself. You do have to overcome your self-doubts. You do have to ask questions. You have to say, gee, what that person said, I wrote it down, but that was that even English? That didn't make sense to me. And you have to ask, and you have to take some initiative to help grow yourself. And hopefully, as a leader in this industry, you find backing and support when you do that. And that's my goal in our industry to help and fill. But really, you can learn and make a meaningful career out of this and make it a place where you want to be.
Yeah. So when it comes to one of the things you talked about is like board education, but also like adapting or putting the right person in the seat for each association or HOA, because it is a different group of people. Each group of houses has its own, it attracts a certain person, right? Like wherever you live, it's kind of attracting a certain demographic or whatever. And so, yeah, you have to be adaptable. That's a very interesting thing to think about, because I think that's maybe a little different than like the apartment world, for instance, although you need to be kind of adaptable too. And they're all different and all that. But you're dealing with owners and board members and being able to like ask questions and kind of feel them out. But then somebody I talked to from the HOA world talked about how they were kind of coming up with something almost like a dating website profile so that an HOA could kind of see if this manager is a good fit.
All right. I can see that. I'm like trying in my mind, I'm like, what will we name this? Humble, like, that one's taken. Like, what would this app be named? But that's some of the challenge that we go through, because additionally, if you have the perfect manager, elections happen generally every year, so that could change, and who knows it. So it's really about creating relationships that establish longevity with your clients, and having managers who are adaptable to that, or can also understand and work with you and say, oh gosh, we're running, how can we get on the same page? We are two very completely different perspectives. So it's really kind of a lot of, I mean, sometimes it feels this, I'm not licensed, like marriage counseling though. Sometimes it feels like that sort of relationship, and working through and making sure that we can meet our clients' needs. But
it is interesting, the boards, they get voted into this, but they haven't necessarily been on a board before, and especially not on the board of an HOA. So they really don't know how to do it.
That's correct. And there's absolutely no qualifier other than owning a home in that organization that qualifies you to be a board member. So it is really interesting. A lot of people do show up to, well-intentioned homeowners show up to a board meeting to, I don't know, talk about landscaping, and then sure enough, that's an annual meeting. Congratulations, presto changeo, you're a board member. It happens a lot, more than you think. And if we're lucky, we'll keep them on the board for 10 years or whatever their term limit can be. But what's interesting about that is it's not, it's definitely a very normal story, and board members sometimes really, really click with that. And there's a lot of very well-intentioned board members who understand the work that it takes. They've had a good education, they understand their fiduciary obligation, and they're very vested in making sure their neighborhood is run smoothly and understand the negative ramifications that can happen if you have a divested board or a board with their own personal intent. Another group that I'm involved with is just got involved with, but the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce down here. And they actually have what was interesting to me, because I'm always kind of dabbling and figuring out what would be good, what would be not. They actually have a whole section for nonprofit style board training, because this is something that's not typically unique. It is not only unique to our industry. I mean, sometimes it feels like it because we deal with it day in and day out, but there's actually a lot of very well-intentioned nonprofit board members who get elected and they're like, now what? So it is cool to be able to provide training and have influence and teach people how to be little business people, because that's what these are. These are tiny little corporations, and you have to make business decisions for them. So we get the unique job, in being an industry where we have to introduce new people, because it's not necessarily you're getting a manager from another company who knows what they do. We get to teach people how to manage business people while learning to run a business, and then also teach those board members how to manage their own business at the same time. So it's a whole lot of education. Saying that makes me feel like I should probably have a lot more apples around. I feel like I'm missing out on apples.
So one of the things that was coming to mind was so many people buy a house that has an HOA with no intention of getting involved with that HOA. They just are more like, how much are my dues going to be? That's like the barrier to entry. They're like, okay, I'm buying this house. Are the dues really high? All right. They're not that high. Cool. I'm going to buy that house.
And it's becoming, in this market, in Oregon and Washington, it's becoming harder to buy a house that's not in an HOA. We have HOA-friendly laws in both states, and HOAs have a lot of influence over neighborhoods. So a lot of people, we try very hard not to make it people's first interaction with the HOA, but usually it has to do with getting a bill, or like their first real drive to participate is when they get cited for something that they did that was against their community rules.
Well, I mean, the first two things that they probably experience are they get a book of rules and they get a bill for their dues.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, now the book looks a lot more like a PDF, and you get it at closing, and it's this really, you get like 500 other papers at closing.
Yeah.
Sure, sign off. It's great.
Yeah, totally.
Until you find out you can't put grandma's windmill in the front yard, and that's the whole reason you bought the house. We try to drive positive community interaction. And I know a lot of organizations do as well. And we do a lot of reach out. And I know CAI has a homeowners organization and a homeowner circle that's really powerful. But essentially, they're not super well heard of. And we do our best to communicate with owners, encourage boards to communicate with owners in their neighborhood, and encourage participation. Because there's a lot, HOAs have a lot of leverage and a lot of authority. So that's something we're constantly educating on. So, it doesn't really matter who we talk to. We're always educating. That's what we drive. It's important that homeowners and board members feel good about the decisions they make, or at least feel justified in those decisions. It's really hard to become a business person for your neighborhood. So I do feel for a lot of HOA board members. But if we can educate them to have the correct fiduciary responsibility that is really, really helpful, especially in times like this where insurance premiums are up and cost of materials is up and replacements are up and things like that. That's something that we work through consistently.
Totally. So
right.
what are some of the major things that you've learned over the years when it comes to being in this industry and how you interact with the different HOAs and things? Like how do you usually start when you approach a new HOA?
I try to start without assumptions. I think probably the most important lesson or thing I could impart to anybody who's considering being in the HOA industry. You mentioned you came from multifamily, but the HOA industry nationally, but locally even so, is incredibly small. It's a very, very, very small industry. So odds are, if you are interacting with a new client, you know who their previous people are that they interacted with, their previous agents. If you don't know their agents, you know their vendors that they're working with. So sometimes, depending on what it is, I try to come in with an open mind. I ask a lot of questions, getting to know you questions. It almost feels like a job interview. Because I need to know who I'm working with. Yes, there's a book of rules and a book of criteria for the association, which are these are their exact needs, these are the maintenance requirements and things like that. But there's a lot of decisions that need to be made along the way, and I need to know who I'm working with. I need to know their personalities. I can know the roles of the board members, but sometimes those are switched around, and maybe the treasurer is the one who makes all the decisions. So we need to talk and figure out who's making those choices. It's a kind of question and answer process, and we want them to feel comfortable with us and ask us questions too. It's important to know who you're working with. So that's what we're here for.
Yeah. So when it comes to like managing time, because I know that's a big thing within your world too, is sometimes you'll go into it and they're like, oh, we only want to pay you this and we only need you for this amount of time or whatever. But then they actually are more demanding and they want to get more of you than they're paying for. Like how do you manage that?
Well, it is a constant conversation. So time management is important. So for me, more on the managerial side, I talk to my managers about my expectations of them. And then we try and come to a common ground with our boards and what is an appropriate time frame to come to a cadence. Sometimes we actually have to talk through things and be like, I understand that you want to hear from us every hour, and I can definitely help write up a contract for that, but you're not going to want to pay for that. So we work through expectations. We try to come to a common ground. Sometimes we just have to write it out. Sometimes we have to have a meeting of the minds. Sometimes we really try to work with the internal pressures. We establish a regular cadence of communication with our boards and with our managers that works well for them, using the appropriate tools and methods for communication. And then keep an open dialogue. Boards change, opinions change, situations change. The other kind of most challenging factor, not most, but in this industry, we always have the fire, flood, or blood potential. So there's always some sort of emergency that can pull us out at any given time. And you have to build and establish that rapport and relationship where your clients trust you. If I usually am getting back to you in 4 hours, if for some reason today it takes me 12, you're not going to think I've lost anything. You have a trust and you understand that I have your best interests at heart. So working with managers to do that and setting and establishing the right expectations, not glorifying. It's one of the challenges of our industry. I feel like not glorifying burning the midnight oil. That's not good for people who are working in industry for long term. I think, Evan, you probably have examples. I have examples of, this one time I had to pull an all-nighter and take care of all of his business, that maybe isn't necessarily the best example that we want to spread with new people coming in, nor the expectation that I want to set with my board of directors for the next manager who's going to manage those clients. We have to continue to make this palatable for people who are coming into our industry, and make sure that we are observing employment norms from all of the employment world, not just us. Because that's who we really are, kind of competing with. And making sure that
so outside of the what was it? You mentioned kind of flexibility in remote work type stuff, kind of making it a better environment for people to work. What are some other things that you feel strongly about when it comes to the idea of leaving this better than you found it?
So making this a truly collaborative industry to work in, having set standards or codes of conduct with your boards of directors. What I mean by collaboration is important that our clients know that we are professionals. We have to treat ourselves as professionals, and we have to treat our colleagues as professionals. And even if we're taking on new clients who've left other management companies and they may want to share stories, understanding there's always two sides to a story. And making sure that we are building up our industry as the professional. So we can be a trusted and relied upon partner. I know sometimes it's very tempting with board members to go into the realm of fully personal relationships. It's easier to work with a friend, right? That isn't always the best case scenario for the next person. And you want to make sure we are relying on our professional relationships and having us viewed as a professional. While those are meaningful, we work with people in their homes. It's very important. They're excited about life. They want to be excited about our lives. We have to make sure that we maintain the appropriate professional relationship with those clients, and take care of their business. And we're not relying too hard only on friendly relationships, things like that. You have to be honest with your boards, and you have to be honest with your colleagues about, I'm feeling a little burnt out, and you got to be honest with yourself and take time to recoup. It's not always easy, and burnout doesn't always come at the appropriately not busy vacation times. It can sneak up on you. And as a manager in this industry, but also managing employees, it's really important to make this a safe space to have those feelings, and also a stable job where we need the appropriate coverage for people to have those moments. That's fine. The other thing I always encourage, and I know this again sounds weird, take vacations, take time off. It's important. I can't stress the importance of it for longevity. Sometimes talking to myself in that picture, but take your time and actually take your day off. Literally, you can plan for things. It's okay. It's not all reliant on you. I know most people tend to trust their own work, but spreading that love is important. People aren't out to get you. They're not out to take things, especially in your company. So creating an environment where people can spread the responsibility if they need a minute. And then let's see. And then being honest, sorry, I took notes here, but being honest with boards about employee needs. Like, we're humans. It's okay for people to be humans. So I, hope that board members understand, but really if they're really not, I think having some standards set and a code of conduct set, where we can make sure that we enforce that this is a professional relationship and we have standards of how our people are treated. I think that's really important, and important to show the support to new people in this industry, but also existing people in this industry. It's very, it's important to grow that environment, that style. And that's really kind of where I'd like to see our industry go. It's exciting. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah. No,
One
it's
of the
grown a lot. I know that.
one of the things I really loved about this, going back to when I started way back when, boy, I graduated college into some really rough economic times, but it takes like an extraordinarily rough economic time for HOAs to want to board members to want to collect money from their neighbors and pay bills for their neighborhood by themselves. So this is a really secure industry, and that's something that I fully can appreciate.
Mhm.
Growing up in the timeline that I did, I just really want to make sure that this is a solid, stable place for those behind me, and that they have a better experience and they experience better interactions with the next board that comes along. And that's kind of my goal, my hope, and make it a little easier with some industry education, some volunteers, getting the word out there about HOAs, having fun conversations. I think those things are great, and I don't really care if I'm educating somebody who's my client right now or somebody who's my employee right now, or if they're going to be my future employee or client. It's a small industry, so stuff goes all around. So it's not harmful for me to educate somebody right now or in the future. It's completely, I'm good with that.
Well, and in educating them, you might be like, "You're great. You want to work for me?"
That's always nice when that happens.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
when somebody is referring someone to work with you, that's always really exciting.
yeah,
Feels
yeah,
good.
yeah. No, it's I think it's true in most industries that there's certain things that are like, I guess, unique to your company or proprietary, I guess. But
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, there's so many things that are just the same. And there, I don't know how much necessarily an HOA, but there's always these like turnovers and this gets bought and they change to this. And so there's always a shift. So you're going to, like you said, small industry, there's always opportunities to interact with somebody that knew that person that you already were working with. So it's super important
Well,
to not burn bridges, to have good relationships.
correct. And I have been lucky enough. I get to know other management company leaders from our market, but also all over the country, even around the world a little bit. It's been really exciting and rewarding, and just gaining those different perspectives. I know when I did my Barbie, or when I did my Barbie, whoa, Barbie is a part of my life. I'm a young kid. Um, when I did my case study, I called it like Barbie Dreamhouse HOA, because
Okay.
up here in our market, there weren't a ton of those kinds of organizations and associations around here. There's a few, but like real few and far between. So it's really kind of fun to like problem solve and get to that level of detail. But we got to know all different people with all different perspectives from all over the country. And it's really cool and really, really neat. And I think there are little pieces of that if well thought or brought right, you can bring to your local market, or little pieces of conversation. You never know what's going to stick with you and what's going to be the next meaningful thing that you can bring to your clients or bring to your market. And just never fully feeling, I think where people run into issues is when they get stuck or when they get stubborn. They're like, no, it's just not like that. And I don't, I never fully try to deal in those absolutes. I think there's always a little bit of conversation on both sides of the coin, and trying to figure out what works for us. And that's one of the fun things in kind of an evolving young industry, which is really exciting. And for me anyway, that's what keeps me here and keeps me going.
Yep. And I know that there's a lot of companies, smaller ones, HOAs and stuff. There's also a lot of consolidation that's happening, and where there's a few bigger companies starting to get bigger. And so that's super interesting, because when you bring small entities together, then you have to figure out how to work within this bigger structure, and as you've experienced, it's a whole different dynamic.
Completely. And I don't regret that. Well, it wasn't super fun at the time. There's always challenges of two entities coming together. I was really excited when we were just a tiny startup. I like had my designated spot, and that was the highest I was going to go. Now that we're part of, a larger company, Associa, like there's definitely a lot more potential and a lot more support for my employees and a lot more opportunity out there.
Sure.
And I don't have to run the health plan anymore. So that was great for me as
That's right.
And okay, don't let them hear this. We have real IT now because I also wore the hat of fake IT, and that is no fun for anyone.
No, I hear you.
So it is really neat, but I do think finding your own flavor, finding that ability to communicate, it's almost just kind of a language translating back and forth to, okay, so we're part of a larger thing now. How do we explain what we're doing and coming to a common ground? It's not super uncommon to what we do every day with our associations, but it is interesting to see, and it's interesting to see how this industry grows and evolves. It's really fascinating to me, and never did I ever think I would have so many friends like across the country, but I do. It's really awesome. So
no, that's great. Yeah, and this year, so we work in HOA. We're like a 60-40 split with our business, so 40% is roughly HOA, and we're slowly learning more and more about the industry, and it's been awesome to have people like you on Boss Talks. But we're also this year jumped in. We're a partner of Associa when it comes to Associa Advantage, so excited to be a part of that too.
We're excited to have you, and I hope I know that will be a very good relationship to have with you, and we're happy to offer that to our clients.
Yeah, it's been fun to learn more about what you guys got going on and learn more about the dynamics of the company, because the whole like each market has a few different, I guess, flavors of Associa.
Flavors, that's a good way of putting it. There's many different ways to grow, and I think there's just a large shared client base with a lot of different needs and stuff. So we have associate companies that we work with here in the Pacific Northwest. And I mean, technically we would probably be considered competitors, but we learn, their business model. And if we're talking to a client that doesn't necessarily fit our depth of services, we can just say, hey, maybe another one will. It's an interesting relationship to work with. And again, challenges your opinion of normal, because you're like, what, a competitor? Like, I wouldn't mind, but it is kind of for growth, and it really does help in the concept of collaboration, or even, if it's not a sister company, working with your competition to make a better industry. It's not really that hard. It does take some bravery to pick up the phone and be like, hey, I heard from this client of yours. Are you doing okay? Because, it's not bad, and it builds trusted relationships. And that's, really kind of ultimately what we're looking for, both business wise and with our clients. It's something that's important. So we enjoy, it's a fun network of people, and it's definitely an interesting experience. Not what I got out of college and planned for, but I'm definitely glad I'm here.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like having those relationships, even outside of Associa, for instance, if somebody approaches you and who serves them right now, like a HOA board or whatever, and they want to come to you now, it's kind of like, well, why do they want to switch?
Why is a very important question.
Because it could be that they're very money driven, they're very hard to work with. Who knows?
It's true, but why are they hard to work with? Why, why is money so important? Or, it's interesting. Like, we have to still work to establish value to our clients. That's something that every company that I know does. And those whys are super important questions. And same with people. When people come and want to work for me, I'm like, why? Why do you want to work with me? I think I'm great, but I want to know why you think I'm great. No, but those are things that we constantly are working on and seeing and looking at trends and do we need to adjust the business line, or do we need to try something different or look on a different side of the coin here? And then, and maybe we just have to establish value. We don't, it is our goal to make this a good long relationship with our clients. And if people are coming to us simply because they, their prior management company didn't jump so high or do whatever, we have to be honest and make sure that we are going to be able to feasibly solve their problem, or in that conversation, have an honest conversation and say, maybe those are things you need to investigate and work through. And you build trust either way. Like say, small world, they're going to come to you sooner or later. So you're probably going to see them.
That's right. That's true. All right. So there's 3 questions we can get through quickly here at the end of the hour. One of them is, when it comes to building community, how is it that you like to approach that when it comes to your personal and or professional life?
So building community. So in my personal life, I like to meet with people, and it's probably easiest to build people you have kind of an instant connection with, a je ne sais quoi, and get to know them, have honest conversations. I love to take people to lunch, and what makes you tick? What got you into this? What's happening? Professionally, it's not too different, really, honestly. We have a business, so when people come to me and want to talk about doing business together, we have that conversation. I work with some great people here. I have a great business developer who helps establish those things with us too. But we have that conversation. We really kind of just get to know them and create a relationship as a trusted professional. So, and then I guess, I know it's going to sound really awful, I just am not shy. I just say, hey, if I'm curious, I'll ask. It's important. And then you can drive meaningful connection. I do think if you're genuinely interested in someone, they're genuinely interested in chatting with you too. People can tell if you're not sincere, or if you have like some ulterior motive or something like that. So I think finding general common interest is really kind of the start of building community. And then really kind of figuring out, what you want to know more about, or, write out some goals and be like, who is going to help me understand these goals? And, have open, conversations. Make sure there's something you buy into. You're not going to come across very genuine if I were like, I really want to understand the inner workings of how to fix whatever happened with Microsoft. It's not really what I'm interested in. So if I wrote out goals on that would be pretty hard for me to establish relationships in. I might be successful. Like I said, I'm not shy, but those are things, finding common interest and figuring out how you can help them, honestly, builds relationships.
Cool. Well, thanks for answering. And then next question, a newer question that I ask: when it comes to parking, do you have any parking related stories that come from your immediate professional experience when it comes to HOAs that maybe are funny or challenging? Whatever comes to mind. Sounds like something came to mind.
Well, we have a few big advocates of public transportation here. I think it's great. Sometimes zoning laws and parking and the number of bedrooms are not all friends. So we have an association that we manage that is literally in an island of traffic. And your parking spot for your 3-bedroom unit is the one in your garage. So that can be super fun and super challenging. And as you can imagine, with fire code, there's not a lot of forgiveness when it comes to like blocking fire trucks coming in or out. So that's always a fun conversation to have. And naturally, there's a lot of investors who are prevalent in that kind of environment who don't necessarily pass that information along to renters. So we have, there's all sorts of fun stuff that and types of things. My favorite parking complaint that I get is Well, there's been honestly, I've been doing this for a long time. There's been so many. But complaints about parking on public streets and things like that, and who's in charge of what, and trying to explain how to read a plat map, fun stuff like that. But that's why I think companies like I want to say Parking Boss, but Community Boss are super helpful.
Same thing.
Association managers like us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's always the challenge. And I don't know if it's the one, but are you talking about a community in Hillsborough / Beaverton?
Really close to Hillsborough, in the small unincorporated area between Beaverton and Hillsborough, yeah.
So is it?
You might know it.
So is it next to the light rail line?
Yes.
Okay. So I know my parents used to live near that. You literally have to take, it's like a part of the traffics. You go around this community to get through the traffic, through the light rail line.
That is correct.
Yeah.
It is a community island, quite literally.
Yeah. It's weird.
We've managed them for a lot of years. But yes, I do think the number of bedrooms and where parking spots are located can provide some unique challenges.
Yeah. So I grew up in Hillsborough. So that's where.
Fantastic.
Yes. In fact, I grew up in an HOA, Jackson School. You may know that one.
Beautiful. Yes, beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. So that was my upbringing, was in that neighborhood. So
very cool. Yeah. I grew up in Aloha, which is the unincorporated area between Beaverton and Hillsborough. So yeah. Okay. We probably should talk offline. We maybe know some folks.
Yeah, I think we're about the same age too. So
probably.
All right, and then you earlier mentioned coffee. So a question I always ask is, what's your go-to coffee beverage?
Ooh, hot or cold?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Okay. So ordinarily, I'm going to speak in terms of hot because I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so I like my gray weather. I love a non-fat latte with 1 pump of caramel syrup. That is like go-to forevermore. I can drink black coffee. I can drink cold coffee. I can drink cold brew coffee. I love coffee. I don't like coffee with grounds in it, but I will eat chocolate covered coffee beans. So I do have instead of wedding china, for our wedding, my wife and I requested a very nice espresso machine. So we've had espresso machine here for quite some time. Gotten pretty good at making my own. So yeah.
All right. Well, fun fact: I will be sending you some coffee, Boss Blend coffee. And a nice coffee little mug and some other fun stuff. So
that sounds amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. We do literally have our own coffee called Boss Blend. So
that is incredible. That's amazing.
And I think it's kind of an espresso grind that it comes in. So it might be ready for you to put into your machine.
All right. I am a weird. So I do espresso, but I also do drip. I do both. I know not a lot of folks live in both worlds, but I really do love coffee.
Well, beautiful. Yeah, we represent the Northwest. We figure we might as well give people coffee.
That makes 100% sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Carrie, it's been great to have you. I really appreciate you giving me some of your time and getting to know you a little bit more. And I look forward to continuing to do that offline, but just like she jumped on Boss Talks, you too can. So if you are a boss, whether that's in the HOA world or condo world or the apartment world, I want to know your story. I want to know what makes you a boss and what you are passionate about. So if you are interested in being on Boss Talks, I'm interested in knowing you. So reach out and we'll make it happen. But this episode 99 was with Carrie from Blue Mountain Community Management, and it was a joy to have you and get to know you, and look forward to doing that more. So tune in next week for episode 100 of Boss Talks as we celebrate that and have a great show again. So see you then, and thanks for watching.